To our listeners, to our viewers, welcome back to another episode of Debates Never Die. It's Khanya Mosetlhi, joined by Malcom Masvikwa. Good sir, how are you feeling?
I feel hard done by.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
that's
mm,
all I have
mm.
to say.
That's where you're at.
They know why. But I also feel very enthralled. I feel very ecstatic because
Mm.
I'm officially in the top 5 in South Africa on FPL, and my hate is week on week. You're just gonna just keep hating more and more. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there. I'm 327th of all FPL players. You're dealing with Jose Mourinho. I am actually Jose Mourinho.
And as I keep saying, and I'm sure that the listeners will echo these sentiments, change your FPL name. Change your FPL
BBL
name.
to make it clear, I realized this weekend that there may be a misconception. BBL stands for Boys by Lamborghinis, right? Boys by Lamborghinis Football Club, and not what we colloquially say BBL stands for. So hopefully, with that information, I'll get the respect I deserve because it's a very creative name. There's a lot of history behind BBLFC. But in any case, we can get into this week's episode. I'll hand it back to you, sir.
Change your FPL name. That's what I have to say. Anyway, listeners, Sheiks, you started off by saying you feel hard done by. I don't feel hard done by because football is always, at least since Arsenal first started to disappoint me, it's become bigger than Arsenal for me. Football is joy in many different places. The feeling I have more than any other, vindication. Uh, the way in which Liverpool beat Chelsea, yeah, I thought they'd score a few more than that. I think that game showed that neither of those teams are that hectic, really.
I completely agree with you. I don't know. Yeah, where do you want to start on that? Because I have some very interesting thoughts, actually, based on things members said on the group. So I don't know where you want to start on that with that game.
I think first things first, it's important to highlight Curtis Jones, the Super Mhlala. I hope that you are watching and listening to this. I don't think you have a play you've been more outlandishly wrong about. It makes
Right.
very little sense that he plays for your team. You should have seen him more than any of us have. I hope that at some point in time you're able to make peace with the fact that that's your star boy. That's your star boy. That's one of your big head. He's going to do more for Liverpool than Harvey Elliott will. Thanks.
Curtis. Let's talk about Curtis Jones, right? So that's obviously a man of the match performance. We both agree he was
Mhm.
the decider. Like he goal line clearance, scored one, and the penalty was he got fouled for the penalty. So that is
Mhm.
one of the best performances I've seen by a Liverpool player not named, the big three, right, or the big
Yeah.
four: Salah, Trent, Alisson, Van Dijk.
Yeah.
What do you think is at the root of, like, because the commentator, I had John Champion, and I'm not sure who was his co-commentator, his co-chair, but I had them commentating the game, and the co-chair said something interesting about Curtis Jones. He said he's a very divisive figure for
Mm.
Liverpool. Fans either love him or they hate him. Why do you think that is? Why do you think a Scouse player, someone who's come through the academy, is not being loved the way Saka and Smith Rowe, or like Rashford before the tweets, have been?
Mm. I think it might be because he's not necessarily had a standout moment, right? I think he's had good performances here and there, but when you look at or think about someone like Mano, he's had performances that have been bookended by really, really big goals. I think it's a really sad thing to think about, but I think a lot of midfielders right now have their work kind of undermined if they don't have any final third involvement like that. I think Curtis Jones is a proper second phase midfielder. I actually think Curtis Jones is underrated and has this divisive opinion over him for the same reason England seem to never have midfielders. I don't think they appreciate any of them. It's not like England just don't produce any players in that position. I think they just don't pay enough attention to any of those players.
So what are his key? So let me explain why I liked Curtis Jones. I liked
Mm,
Curtis Jones because he is, again, you need those one. Not, he may not be a one club man, but he has the minerals to be that, right? You need those
yeah,
players that are the physical embodiment of your fan base,
yeah.
and there is like a fearlessness that he's always played with. I've always
Mm,
appreciated the fact that he's never been phased by the moment. I do, however, acknowledge the deficiencies he has as a player, right? Like he's not the the smoothest of players. Just touches get away from him. His decision making can suffer at times. I also do think he's caught between being a 10 and an 8, which isn't always the best thing for a midfielder. So he seems like the type of midfielder that needs instruction. He needs a manager behind him to kind of help him best, capitalize on what he can do. Um, but again, echoing the sentiments you've just spoken to, right? There's a lot to enjoy about him. But what are his traits? Because you said he's a second phase midfielder, so
Mm,
middle of the pitch.
mm.
I'm not sure if I agree with that, but I don't disagree with it. I just want to know what it is about him that makes you see he is that type of player, and who would you liken him to? Like, which other midfielder would you throw in the name? Because I have a name, but I want to see who you have.
So I think what you're saying about him being like a cross between a 10 and an 8, I understand why you'd say that. I think that's just how he's been used. I don't necessarily think that that's truly where we'll see Curtis Jones long term. I think he is meant to be in the midfield too. What I like about him is that he just has a like a presence. He has a presence. Like
That's true.
yeah, like he's not necessarily a control. He's not a Jorginho kind of guy,
Right.
obviously, right? Like
Very true.
he doesn't have that level of security. But I think the way he tries to carry the ball, the way he's not so ruthlessly and like incessantly attacking as other English CMs are, right? I feel like a lot of them are almost end up like road runners, right? Like they're just running
Yes, yes.
suicides a lot of the time.
Which has been
Every
which
time
has
they get
been
it, they want to
my which has
drive.
been my issue
Yeah,
with a lot of English midfielders that they've produced probably since the turn of the century, really, because they
mm.
saw Lampard and Gerrard, and it became a cheap imitating act for basically everyone that isn't named Jack Wilshere. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you think about James Madison, for example. He's someone who I feel it would have been nice to see if he could have developed his game and started to play a little bit deeper. And he plays the sort of kind of respect for Spurs, but if you saw at the weekend, he got subbed off at half time, and Spurs kind of click into gear because there's players who seem more assured. I'm not sure if he was injured or not, but I think generally English midfielders seem to be almost too direct. I feel like Curtis Jones has a much better read of the game. Generally, he doesn't ever feel that rushed. He feels like he feels not necessarily controlled in the same way as Jorginho, but he feels like a midfielder who values possession. He values,
Yeah,
you know,
you're doing. I completely agree. He lets the
yeah,
game come to him. I completely
yeah.
agree with that
In
aspect of
terms
your
of
analysis.
a stylistic similarity, I don't really have one. I don't have a name off the top of my head. Um, and it's because they aren't English midfielders like that. So like I'd want to look inside his country and say he reminds me
I
of this guy, but like
I have one
not really.
that's like a a bit of a throwback. I have two actually. He
Let me
reminds
hear
me
you.
of these two players. First of all, I do want to just say, I don't know who said it on Twitter. Sorry that I can't give them daps, but they said Conor Gallagher is Curtis Jones if he went to private school. And the conversation behind that being, when Oaks go to private schools, like typically like your soccer isn't the football isn't like the highest, right? So
Yeah.
you kind of get dapped as the guy. I had a few friends from like Seheti and King David that applied to this because you don't have much competition. So you get
Mm.
acclaimed as the Oak, and then your game suffers holistically as a result of that.
Yeah.
So I just found that very funny, and I can see why people have that because I think Curtis Jones is is a Conor Gallagher with a brain, a bit more awareness of the game holistically, right? I think Conor Gallagher
Mm.
is a player that he's overly reliant on how tenacious he is, right? Whereas Curtis Jones is like tenacious in moments, and I love
Mm.
that intensity from both of them. But like it's not a suicide match as you said. Anyways, the players that Curtis Jones kind of reminds me of, uh, like a Paul Merson, Ray Parler type
No, you say like
midfielder.
he's a proper old school English CM. He
I
can throw in a
see.
tackle. He can pass, but he's not
Yeah,
all the
he's
way.
all the way there.
Okay.
Yeah, like
Okay. Okay.
I see that, but I think he's a bit more competent on the ball. Maybe
Mm.
than Merson for sure, but like Ray Parler, yeah, I mean, he had some tech, but like, yeah, it's like a nice hybrid of everything. But and I liken it to those guys because of the conversation we had about England on Twitter.
Mm.
Those guys weren't England internationals, right? They weren't.
Mm.
I mean, they played for England, but they weren't
Mainstays.
household names, right? Yeah, so I kind of see it as that. I see him, or another name that I was thinking of is Aaron Ramsey. Like I see him as that
If he was
type
a
of.
bit more high energy, I'd say yes.
Yeah, yeah. There
Yeah,
is that difference. Also, not as
Ramsey's engine is it was unmatched.
different level. Yeah, different
Mm,
level. Yeah, and also not as attacking. Maybe Ramsey pre 14.
mm.
Like there's a
I can see
similarity.
that.
There's
I
yeah,
can see
Ramsey
that. I
was
can see
like
because also
just
a
a ball
box to
playing midfielder,
box. Yeah,
box to box,
but
ball playing, can win the ball
okay.
back. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I like
Actually,
Curtis
I
Jones.
think you're there. All right, I actually think you're there. I think I'm willing to give it Ramsey. Yeah, because it's also
And
capable
quite
of operating out wide to a certain level.
yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
and
No.
quite poetically, there's that same reluctance to embrace the same way with Arsenal fans
That
embracing
Arsenal fans had.
initially.
Yeah.
Yeah, initially with
It takes a
Ramsey, like
while until
Liverpool,
eventually that person has delivered for you time and
and
time again.
kind of going back to what you were saying, Ramsey only got that universal adoration when he started scoring.
Mm,
Like the modern game of football has killed the maestro, as we've spoken about a lot. Um,
mm,
but yeah, that's just you highlighted Curtis Jones. That's a great place to start. I think it was Tabani or um, Siba. I forget which one of them. It was one of those Ananda boys, but they were saying how Liverpool, and I wish we had CBL because I wanted to get his viewpoint on this. They emphasize that Arne Slot's management style is one of like like pacification, like he pacifies the opposition by like neutralizing them. So
mm.
his in-game management is what was being highlighted. And I, for
Yeah.
the first time, I saw it because I think I had a bit of a blind spot towards Liverpool because we've had Klopp for 7 years, and before Klopp,
Mm,
we had Brendan Rodgers, and then even Roy Hodgson, right? I always think back to, was it 09-10 when we played Liverpool at the Emirates? It was 2-2. Robbie Keane scored that banger. RVP also scored a bang. We're going banger for banger.
mm,
Yeah, like Liverpool have always been play on the front foot, high energy attacking. Them and United have almost been similar in that sense.
mm,
And now we have a manager who's a lot more passive, right? Like
mm,
I watched the game, and there were times where Chelsea had a strong command of the ball, and it just seemed like Liverpool were letting them.
mhm.
It didn't seem like they were really pressed to press and get the ball back. They kind of pick and chose when they did that, which is
When to
interesting.
press, when to get aggressive, when to, yeah.
Right, which is
Mm.
interesting because you're at Anfield, and people have noted. I think it was you who said Anfield is quiet. I'm not sure,
It was
and
the
I
bunny.
think
Mm.
Tabani, and I think there is
Yeah.
a connection there. I think the way Liverpool are playing is impacting the crowd, which again I wish I had Siba here because I think that could pose a problem going forward because Anfield has always been their superpower, you
Yeah.
know, and it just seems like the way Slot is going about managing them. If you go to Liverpool with the right game plan in terms of when you attack, how you attack, not antagonizing, I think you can neutralize that crowd, which is almost blasphemous to say because it's
Mm.
literally the best crowd in Europe. But yeah, what are your viewpoints on like I guess the in-game management, also from the perspective of like Enzo Maresca, dude? Like, how
Mm.
did you look at that Chelsea performance?
So I like what you touched on with Slut there. I think what you've highlighted is probably the big change I've seen in Liverpool since he's arrived, and I think what most people would have expected that the emotion that Klopp played with, Slot doesn't really play that way. I think Slot is maybe not to the same extent as our dictator, Mr. Arteta, but he is actually a defense first coach. Like he values control. He values control in a way that I think you could liken to like Pep, where you want to like make sure you aren't constantly, chasing back, needing to defend in numbers, like in transition, like knowing how Chelsea play primarily. I think they let them have the ball to say, no, no, create, show us, show,
Yeah, show
show
us.
us,
Yeah,
show us
and
what
we
you are.
we
No,
tweeted
no,
this. We tweeted this
we're
about
gonna
Chelsea. We tweeted
mize.
this
No,
about Chelsea. Yeah,
show us, show us.
yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
there was like, oh, no shots on target in the first half from
That's a
Chelsea.
very yeah. They no. That's what
Yeah,
that's how I use the word like pacifier. He
yeah,
pacifies
yeah.
opposition,
So
which
in
I
terms,
don't think we'll get into next weekend. But yeah, carry on.
yeah. So in terms of it being an issue because of Liverpool losing the emotional benefit of Anfield, I disagree. I think
Okay.
that by the time Klopp's reign ended, it was clear to me at least that they were living off of emotion far too much.
Yes, very true.
Like it was very easy for Liverpool to end up like dispirited, disheartened, and that was pretty much it. I don't know if that's because Klopp himself was truly running out of energy, as he said, and he didn't, know how to provide his team with what they needed in the same way anymore. And maybe that's all it was. But I think to a certain extent, the fact that you have these high energy games, these like high emotional energy games, it's hard to keep riling yourself up for it year in, year out, or just game in, game out. Where if you lose a game in a certain way, you're pretty much done. Like when Liverpool lost to Crystal Palace at the end of last season, that was it. That was it. It didn't ever feel like they were the same kind of side. By the time they played Everton at Goodison Park, kind of felt like they were going to lose.
Mm.
Right, like the spirit was done. There was nothing left to play for. Like all the energy of the season, all the belief had been sapped out of them. I think what Slot has provided is there's a level of control, a level of composure that I think Liverpool have that they haven't had in years. That kept being repeated last season, where Liverpool kept going behind, needing to come back to win games. That's not ideal. Like you don't
Mm.
actually want that to be the thing your team does best. We always come back. No, no. How about we just don't go behind? What if that just didn't happen? Wouldn't it be dope? Wouldn't it be dope if you just won 2-0, 1-0? Like I think being an Arsenal fan and having been involved in so many super emotional games where we've thrown them away, and like I've emphasized, I love winning ugly as an Arsenal fan. Like, yes, you want to
Yes, yeah, yeah,
see
yeah.
super exciting football, but I actually want to beat you 1-0 set piece hurt. And then you
Mm.
attack and you reach for us and you reach for us and you reach for us and you just can't. You just can't create anything. Like choosing to like the way Arsenal beat PSG. Obviously got a little scrappy towards the end, but the kind of game where it's like, yeah, we know we're out of this game. I feel like for a long time, Klopp's Liverpool couldn't really do that. Like they couldn't close out games. They had to keep
Is
trying to play on the front foot, and I think
it,
slot side benefits from that. Sorry.
is it missable though? Like I see what you're saying, and like it is solving a big problem Liverpool have had, especially at the end of Klopp's reign. But like, is that going to like I don't know, man. It's weird. It's eight games in, and Anfield has been quiet basically every single game that I've watched.
Mm,
Right, like I think it was the game against Nottingham that they lost at home.
hmm
Um, that felt like the Hawthorns at 2 p.m. watching that game, bro. I was even triggered, even though I'm not. That's not my team, but like, bro, like
Yeah.
it was legitimately like, what am I watching right now? And like, I hear what you're
Mm,
saying. It is slot is what they need. I
mm,
agree. I think despite being underwhelmed and despite the deficiencies, and I think they are very superstar reliant right now.
hmm
Um, I just
Shout out
question
to Mo
whether or not,
Salah.
yo, bro. Also, shout out to Pogba 2.0, as according to Siba Ryan Gravenberch, because
Nah,
he also had a
serious
superb
stuff.
game. He had a
Serious
fucking
stuff.
great game, man. Yeah, he played
Mm.
so fucking well. But yeah, sorry, I cut you off there. But Enzo Maresca, you were also going to touch on, I guess, the Chelsea side of things. You touched on, and I just want to point that out. Like the criticism we've always had of Chelsea. Well, let me say me. You are a team. So like if you think back to Arsenal 2021 22,
Mm.
teams don't when you're a team when you're a big side up and coming, teams will intentionally attack you and intentionally play risky because they know beating a big team whilst you're down is the boost that they need to carry them through the season. So
Mm.
teams will push that line up, dare your wingers to go 1v1, and as a result we saw some incredible goals, right? In Arsenal 21
Mm.
22, they very quickly learned the following season that you can't play like that against us. But the
Mm.
reason why I don't think we suffered is because we had the right profiles and cohesion in our team to break down a low block or to
Mm-hmm.
play on the break or to play, man v man. With Chelsea, people have been kind of jumping a bit because they are playing competently and they are playing well, and it's been a long time. But they were I tweeted. I tweeted. I can get the tweet. I said if you want to stop Chelsea, just stop them in transition. Just
Mm.
stop them because they cannot. If you look at that midfield, as good as Lavia is, as good as Casado is, and I think that's a very good pivot to have to build around, right? Palmer, Madueke, Sancho have no interchange, cohesion, link up whatsoever. You literally have
Mm.
you have a front four of players who are all most effective when they are running in behind or running at players.
Mm.
And there were so many times Cole Palmer had the one chance where he could have reversed it to Madueke, and then he took a touch and he tried to place it. It was like the cutback,
Mm.
and Madueke is putting his hands up. Jackson is putting his hands up. Sancho's like, what's going on? Oh no, Sancho was off at that stage. It was Pedro Neto, I think.
Yeah.
And it's now a thing of like Chelsea, to your point, like dare them to try break you down. I feel like
Mm.
Chelsea remind me of Arsenal. Arsenal is my point of reference for everything, but I think it was maybe 08, 09, like when Fabregas wouldn't be playing, and like we didn't have Rosicki,
Ooh.
we didn't have Kleb.
Mm.
I think this is when Arshavin just came, and now like Ferguson very famously said like just defend the box and then
Mm.
kill them on the counter. And it just seems like that's exactly what Liverpool did. So, yeah, what do you make of Chelsea? Enzo Maresca, your boy Nicholas Jackson, Enzo Fernandez not playing. Like, how do you look at that performance from their point of
I think let's start with Enzo. I think the footballing world really should take a moment to think about how it happened that a player who had played 6 months in Europe was 100M, and everyone said, "Yeah, yeah, 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 he's good, he's good." Like, I think everyone should have said, "Whoa, whoa, there's no one else. There was no other CM that could do what that he can do." What are we saying? A lot of people play football. You want to scout some more. There's no 40 guy somewhere that we can find that can
view?
do what Enzo Fernandez can do. It has to be him. Oh, okay. Same with Mudrik, by the way. I hope that's not lost on anyone. Um, but yeah, I think what you said is quite accurate. It's a point of concern. I'd imagine for Chelsea fans that it's just like if a team is able to put up a deep block, that's pretty much it. We saw it
Mm,
against Forest as well. Like
yes.
Liverpool were fortunate to have seen Chelsea drop points literally a week before, and you have an immediate thing of like if obviously you'd imagine with the level of analytics that takes place, they'd have known that beforehand. But I think it's always helpful when you've seen it just in the game just gone that okay, here's where we could potentially hurt this team. Um, so yeah, I think Chelsea are, and there's honestly no shame in them being a transition side. They've only now just committed to Enzo
Right.
Maresca. They
Yeah.
are
This is where.
rebuilding. There's
Yeah.
absolutely nothing wrong with this. This is the first time um, that I think first big game at least that Lavia and Caicedo have been able to play together. It's still the first time for a lot of different scenarios for this team, right? Like for them to have the cohesion to go up against this Liverpool side that has years of playing together on top of the defensive solidity that Sluts instilled at Anfield. It was always a tall order. Like it wasn't a hot take to say there's no way Chelsea win this game. So it's like
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
it's a like Chelsea and Liverpool is a very big fixture as well. I think more than anything else, I think as good as Cole Palmer is and as exciting and as almost arrogant he can be, and I say arrogant in a good way. I think
Mm,
what yesterday also revealed is just like there are still levels to this kind of thing, because
yes.
you're not
Yes.
this unknown prospect now. No, no, no.
Mm,
Now you're a guy. You
you're
you
talking.
want to be you're the main guy. Oaks know how to kind of deal with you. Oaks will make a plan for you.
Mm,
Trying to figure out exactly what you do in those scenarios. Yeah, I think Chelsea just have lots to learn from that kind of game. Um,
yes. Agreed.
I think when it comes to asserting yourself as a big game player, as a serious player, like at the top level, I think when you see Oaks like Salah, where you know exactly what he's going to do, you know exactly what zones he's going to be in, but he's still able to be effective. You come to really appreciate how good a player is, and I think,
Yeah, that's a
uh,
great point. Yeah,
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 I
because
think,
they know
yeah,
exactly who and when and where, but they
but you
still
can't
can't
stop it.
stop. Yeah,
You
yeah,
can't
like
stop it.
it's there's a level of intentionality that I think a lot of players have to. Because I always say this, like the thing that separates football from a lot of other sports is it's a sport almost entirely played on instinct until you get to the highest level.
Yeah,
Then now, I remember the first time sitting through a video session, you know, and like watching film, and now I'm being asked questions that I was, things I did instinctively, and now I'm like thinking like, huh, like what's the right answer? How do I answer this? Whereas in a lot of other sports, you're brought up on the theory of it all, or even if you're not brought up on the theory of it all, your training is very much based in we can refine XYZ by doing X like XYZ. Whereas a lot of footballers literally just play. Even if you're in an academy setup, you just play, and all of a sudden you're being asked to, replicate that on the pitch. So the downside of that, and I think ironically, Cole Palmer came from Man City, which is one of the most nuanced and specific setups there are. So maybe this doesn't apply to him all the way, but I just see a lot of that in his game. A lot of bystanding at times. especially in big games, especially when is being marked by 3, 4 players, especially when they are flooding his zones and forcing him to go a bit deeper. So, I think you are right to say it's a learning curve. I think for Chelsea as a whole, I don't think it's a bad result. I do still think they're a competent team. I have them finishing in the top four. But yeah, I think something that was also interesting was Enzo Maresca making the subs he made, using all five. On one hand, I can always commend a coach for using his bench, but on the other hand, I'm like, do you not destabilize your flow, your team? Because they did look a bit more disjointed after, I think it was what I have it here. It was, yeah, but it was Neto at half for Sancho. Then it was Badia, Chile, Fernandez, Vega, and Nkunku. Um, was that Vega's first match, or have I
No, no, no.
misplaced?
He's played here and there. I believe he played against Bournemouth as well. He's also
And
played in Conference
Brighton,
League.
and yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, Bournemouth, right? Okay,
yeah.
yeah, it was just interesting. What do you make of that? Again, before we move on from this game, what do you make of Enzo and the
The five
in-game
subs.
management side of things?
So as you know, I'm a big Inzaghi fan, and Inzaghi uses all of his subs every single game.
Hmm.
So with that as the model for the best case scenario from coaches who do that kind of thing, it obviously doesn't always work. So I understand why you'd be hesitant to be like, why would you make that level of change? I think the Buddy Shield sub specifically, I'm just like, I don't know what that actually
It's
does. Right?
weird.
That
That's
that
what
that
literally where I was gonna go. I
yeah.
was like, why is you bringing?
No, look, center back subs. It's very hard to be on board with that unless there's an
Right.
injury or like someone's just having an absolute meh and you're just trying to protect it from themselves. But I appreciate it and I like the fact that he's not willing, sorry, he's not afraid to change things. I like
Yeah.
that for like Sancho's debut, for example. Sancho came off the bench against Bournemouth, and he ends up providing the win. I think I like the fact that he is very quick to say, okay, no, he like I don't like the fact that Wenger, for example, always made very very late subs. I think Arteta's
Yes. Yeah.
guilty of it
Yeah.
to a certain extent as well.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the fact that he is always trying to find some kind of advantage. And whether or not the sub of Neto for Sancho created the goal or not, it didn't, matter of factly. But when you score so soon afterwards, I think you're just constantly giving the opposition something else to think about, even if the rest of the team remains the same. Like I just appreciate like trying to change up your attack. I think with your front three specifically, I think you should always be willing to change that up if you're chasing for a goal.
Yes.
So I'm on board. I'm on board. Overall, I like Mariska. I had jokes, folks who said, "Oh yeah, Teta's Pep's cone, like just you put out the cones, all the stupid things people were saying." Um, but in all seriousness, I have a lot of time for Enzo Maresca. You can see that that's a very serious coach. Like Chelsea, that's the best big game performance Chelsea have had in maybe 3 years.
Uh,
So
4-3 City last season.
um, just in transition. Like I feel like City just I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why, but I don't want to count that. Also, wasn't it 4-4?
4-4. Sorry, yeah, 4-4. Was
Yeah.
it 4-3
No,
against United?
yes, it was against United, but that's because
That's
United
not
are
the goal.
toast.
Yes.
That does not count. Go watch Cole Palmer's last goal. You're gonna tell me best big game performance. I mean, they drew against City twice last season, right? There's one of very few teams that just didn't lose to them. That genuinely just felt like, yes, I'm taking the piss, obviously, but like
Yeah.
that felt more emotive than
Than anything else. Yeah. This did seem more
like an
intentional.
indicator of Chelsea's level at the time because
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
like they did well outside of those games. Whereas now they've played City, they've played Liverpool, and they've gone into those games differing levels of threat that they offered. But I think there's something there. Also, big shout out to Nico Jackson. Um,
Yeah.
they keep making jokes, but you keep proving them wrong.
Yeah, man. I also tweeted about Nico Jackson, bro. I said, it's people are so, let me not be pretentious. I just don't understand how we have at minimum now 30 years of football law to reference,
Mm,
and you'll see players like Nunes and Jackson who have physical attributes that
mm,
cannot be replicated, and you'll still say they're gonna be a bust or they're shit or they're. Like, do you need a first touch when you're as fast as Nico Jackson and you can literally? Do you need a first touch when you can body check someone in a 50-50 if you're Darwin Nunez? Like, you don't. Like, this over this exaggerating of like technicalities with like technical ability rather with footballers when it's so clear that they have a specific role to execute. It
Mm,
make if Filippo Inzaghi played in this day and age, they'd be talking about his dribbling, bro. It's like, no, he's there to score a fucking goal. And I agree. Like I tweeted, I said Nico Jackson, Darwin Nunes, they're the regens for Cavani and Aubameyang, in my opinion. Whether they reach those heights, we'll see.
mm,
But in terms of how they approach the game, the
mm,
impact they have on the game, it's like for like. I do think Aubameyang, especially Cavani, are more. Cavani's far more intelligent than Darwin and Nico and Aubameyang
mm,
too. I think he has a higher level of understanding in the final third. But yeah, like they're gonna have similar careers in my opinion. So it's
mm.
just to the people that were sitting on him and you, Toby, I don't understand what football you watch because he's going to be successful. He's going to keep scoring. It's inevitable. That's at minimum a 15 goal a season striker. Like he
Yeah,
is
there it is.
easily.
I think with these two strikers, I think they are they kind of mocked because of big flops like Werner, because how fast Werner is, the amount of chances Werner gets. Werner will never score 15 Premier League goals, and I think
Yeah, never.
that's a
Yeah,
bit of yeah. I think when people have seen that kind of player move to Chelsea, fresh of a Champions League win, in theory that's like a side that was built towards something really good, and on some level it fell apart because one of their big money attackers just wasn't ever going to deliver on that level. And that's somebody who had a more proven goal scoring track record than either one of Nunez or Jackson actually does at this moment in time. So I can understand it. I think it annoys me more with Jackson specifically because he's already shown that he's that guy. He scored 14 goals in his first Premier League season. There's not a lot of players that don't do that, especially in the Chelsea side that he was in. Like, yeah, and that's underperforming even on statistical models. His XG last season was 18.
right,
Like
right.
the fact that we're saying if he scored four more, and like just matched his XG, which is like the level of like a very good finisher, of course, and he's not that right now. But the idea, like the constant calls for no, Chelsea need like a new striker who's going to. It's just like who is the striker that at 23 years old you could sign who's better than Nicholas Jackson? I don't think he has
And I
peers.
think the XG is a good indication. The Verno comparison is a fair one, but I think like the difference between Verna and Nico Jackson and Darwin Nunez is uh maybe Nunes was underperforming relative to XG, but that's a big difference with Nico Jackson, right? The fact that
Mm.
like he is actually, I mean, overperforming with the. I
No,
don't
he's
know if you get
underperforming.
what
He's
I'm trying to
underperforming.
say. Right, right, right. Yeah, what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say is like Jackson should be scoring more goals. I think the issue with a player like Verna, and again, why I think I implore people to just be a bit more specific with how you see players, how you compare players, is you need to look at their temperaments and their behaviors on the pitch.
Mm.
Werner is a bystander, bro. Like that was
Mm.
the issue with Timo Werner. He was reactive. He's very
Mm.
comfortable. Kind of like what you said about you love about Curtis Jones, how you see a presence. You can forget Werner's on the pitch.
Mm.
You will not
Despite how
forget,
fast he is. Mm.
despite how fast he is, you will not
Mm.
forget that Nico Jackson or Darwin Nunes is on the pitch. You will not, because even if they're not having meaningful contributions on the ball, watch off the ball, watch
Mm.
they're getting into fights with, see
Mm.
who is riling up fans, who is like honestly speaking, before we you move us on to the next topic, the biggest fear I have next week is a Darwin Nunez matched up against Gabriel, even Saliba too,
Saliba
because
suspended. It's going to be New Year's against Ben White.
right, right. Yeah, and that's horrible. And actually, in
Mm,
actual fact, I'd actually prefer him against the Gabriel. So that could actually be to our benefit, because Gabriel likes to get physical. I've noticed
mm,
he's more comfortable when there's a body next to him and there's someone trying to with the dark arts to quote Sky Sports. He responds well to that. I think a player like Saliba would struggle, because
mm,
Saliba, it's like when you play football against and you play disky against someone who doesn't play disky, and then the step over that gets someone that knows the game, it doesn't
mm,
apply. It's the exact same thing. Saliba and is supreme. He's expert at understanding and reading momentum, and anticipating what
Mm.
you're gonna do. That's why, like, whenever he's being pressed and he's the last man, he will just side shuffle and he gets past you.
No,
Nunez will not.
no,
Nunez,
and
he
and
won't
and
stop.
Orthodox nine.
Dude, yeah.
Mm.
So that's a tough matchup. Again, depending on who we pair next to Gabriel, because Ben White would also be a nightmare. That could be tough. And yeah, it's just,
Mm.
again, we need to just look at player behaviors and temperament before, speaking to it. But yeah, all in all, dude, I echo your sentiments. It was a very intentional performance from Chelsea. It was a very reassuring performance from Liverpool, but all in all, I think predictable. I think we all saw that being a Liverpool win. I'm surprised, as you said, that it wasn't more.
Mm. Not for real, for real. But moving on. We have big news. We have big news. Big Thomas Tuchel is back in England. Sheiks, you know where I stand on Tuchel. You know, I'm a huge Tuchel fan. For some reason, though, we've seen the English media who saw him win a Champions League in their country seem very opposed to the idea of a foreign coach. What do you make of it?
I'm the wrong person to ask because I'm one of the least patriotic people you'll come across. Like, patriotism, I understand. I understand patriotism from an internal point of view.
Mm,
So if you're patriotic because you love your country and you want what's best for your country, I'm all for you. Patriotism, when it fixates on externalities, I'll never get. I will never understand it. So it's like England clearly are a team, are a national team that just want a winner. They just want someone who's going to come in and win them a trophy, right? Because you've
mm,
had managers that play, somewhat expansive football or somewhat entertaining football. You haven't been happy because the results haven't been good, right? I think Fabio Capello, there was a lot of, if you look back, okay, I'd say Ericsson, Sven was
Sven Goran
probably,
Eriksson.
yeah, Sven Goran Eriksson was probably the most expansive coach that they've had,
Mm,
right? Like, they played on the front foot, they scored ridiculous bangers. Yeah. Um, they didn't like that because it was round of 16 exit, quarterfinal exit. Okay, cool. You get Capello in, a more pragmatic coach, um, boring as fuck,
mm,
but the reassurance was you're gonna win titles. They didn't like that because the football wasn't as expensive. You then get Roy Hodgson, who's just horrible or
English.
holistically in
He,
my.
he was just English at the
He was
time.
just English, right?
The right
Uh,
choice at the time was Harry Redknapp.
there we go. Right. Yeah, that
Mm,
was a no brainer, right? And it doesn't work. It doesn't look good at all. They're caught between evolving and paying homage to the old guard. So it just flops. You then get Southgate, and Southgate delivers on the basis of results. Obviously, he didn't win them,
mm,
but he got them far. Best performances in tournaments they've had this century, and now
mm,
it's about the football. So now it's like, what do you want? Like
mm.
that's where I land on this whole thing. What do you actually want? Because, as you pointed out, Tuchel, that Champions League win is probably top five ever.
Mm.
Like, he delivered with nothing. Like, bro, like nothing. That is
Bare
probably
bones.
bones, bro. That was one of, like, I think Leicester 15-16 washes that team, and Leicester 15-16 is probably the weakest, like, English champion we've had. Like, they are toast. That Chelsea team is probably the worst Champions League winner this century, including Dortmund from, it was at 02, Monaco, like the Porto, like, bare bones, and he delivered. And not only did he deliver, they played exciting football. They had exciting games, right? Like, you think of that Atletico Madrid, that the was Giroud scored a hat trick, I think it was, like,
No, no, that was
you
against
know
Sevilla. The Drew hat trick, group stages.
the group stages. But then he also scored against Atletico Madrid. He scored a bike, did he not, in the round of 16?
Actually, no. Giroud did not play um, after. I'm actually not sure if Giroud played in the knockout stages, like serious minutes. I'm fairly certain. I was in an argument not too long ago where I was. I'm sorry to Olivier Giroud
Nah,
fans.
he played. He
I,
played. He scored.
I, I
He scored it. He scored it at away at Atletico. He scored the winner.
uh,
Yeah, I remember he
So
scored. I
but that
think it was a
was
bike or
you're actually right. But it wasn't a nice bike. Bike is you know what kind of bike it was. It was a
yeah,
lazy
yeah,
bicycle.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The
His
swimming
leg was
pool,
in the air. His leg
the
was in the
swimming pool
air.
bikes. You know, when
Yeah.
you're in the pool with the ball, and then you just yeah. There's none of those
No,
ones. Yeah,
he
yeah.
leaned back. He leaned back. He wasn't. No, no. But yes,
But
Drew, I apologize. I
but
apologize. Yeah,
right,
Oaks
but
were
like
contributing.
exciting
Like they
games.
were.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Like
Mm,
exciting games. Chelsea 3-0 clean sheet against
mm,
Atletico Madrid over two legs. Like you are a manager that can produce at a high level. You can make the most out of nothing. And as we've seen from his other tenures, whether it's Dortmund, whether it's Bayern, he can also, if you give him good players, he can get those players performing, right? So it's like,
yeah.
okay, he's German. Will you care if he's German if he wins the thing? And they were asking him, "Are you gonna sing the
The anthem.
God Save the
Why?
King, bro?"
Why do you want your coach to sing the anthem? You want to hear him sing? Folks
Kanya, I
supposed,
don't get it.
bro. The English media focus on the wrong things, man. They focus on the wrong things. It's just like it can't benefit you if your coach sings the anthem or not. It won't do anything.
It's to no detriment. So there's just I think that exactly there's just a fixation on things that don't matter. So I don't know, man.
Mm,
I think it's a the most logical appointment for where England are, what they are, um, but they, as per usual, they could be their own worst enemy. And
mm.
now, I don't know. How do you feel he's going to manage that team? That's actually what before we kind of have a broader conversation about international coaches coaching, foreign countries. How do you
Mm.
feel they'll utilize England? Who do you think is going to make the star player? And like, do you think Kane gets ushered out, or how does he handle that?
I think he'll make accommodations to Kane. I think I've said it before that as good as Watkins and Solanke obviously are, I do think there is still just that clear gap in terms of we talk about again back to the idea of presence that they don't necessarily have at this moment in time. That I think would make it make sense for Tuchel to think it's time to move Harry Kane on. If Kane is fit, Kane is going to play. Um, what I do think will change is this end of favorites not of favoritism that doesn't seem to be based on anything truly beneficial to the side. I think Tuchel will have his own favorites. I think
Yeah.
that we'll see players that we wouldn't have seen capped under other coaches or played as much. But I did say Curtis Jones. I believe Curtis Jones will be an England regular for Thomas Tuchel.
Trent, what do you think happens to Trent?
I think
Given,
Trent will be fine.
given,
I
given how he's because sorry, do you think he goes three at the back?
No, I don't imagine he'll go straight at the back. I think he'll probably play a 4-2-3. Um, I think he'll make accommodations for Trent. I don't know why, but in my head I can't imagine Tuchel trying. Like if he plays straight at the back, he'll still play Trent. I can't imagine that will have a situation where Trent isn't prominent for England. I think that there
Uh,
is just there will be a recognition of simple ways to make this make sense. I think he might improve Trent. I think Trent's holistic qualities outside of the fact that English people are like he can pass, he should be in the middle. No, I
no,
think
yeah, definitely not.
yeah, I think we might have a situation where Trent is given like a lot more room to exert himself. Like I think the way Tuchel used fullbacks when he was at Chelsea is probably something similar that we'll see like when he's managing England. The unfortunate thing is that there is no left back, so trying to figure out who that person is or who that figure is will be interesting.
I I I
But
I I think that's a good point. Like how he's gonna use these teams. I personally, my hot take, get rid of this inverting of Trent, bring him back to the byline winger that can just whip in balls and then overload the box. Like, bro, I don't know. Like, I just think not that he can't do it. He does it extremely well, but we've
it's
kind
just
of like
unnecessary.
we've just limited him. It's Trent
Mm,
Alexander-Arnold. Like he can spray passes anywhere on the pitch. Get him higher up the pitch.
mm.
He is a
Like
4-2-3-1
have him
coach.
in the final third. Like
Have him
you'd
in
be
the final
better.
third again.
Mm,
Yeah, and then you can now obviously you can offset. Now that you have another player out wide, you can have maybe Saka or Palmer, whoever they play at right wing. He can now be making runs in the middle, and they can overload.
mm,
Like, I just think it's just a disservice to Trent to play him like that. But
mm.
yeah, I guess I have a question for you just on this whole topic of foreign appointments. Um, if
I don't like how
if
hard you're
like
laughing at this.
if if Bafana wanted to point like a Nigerian coach, is like, how would you
How would I feel?
how would you respond? Because I'm asking the question with no, again, to clarify, no
Mm,
hate towards my Nigerian brothers. Like, yeah,
mm,
I
mm,
love them, man. T boy, that's my like one of my first friends. Grew up having his family, all of that. That's me saying I can't be xenophobic. I have a
I
Nigerian
have
friend.
Nigerian friends. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, good,
yeah.
necessary
I'm
disclaimer.
yeah, right. I'm also of different African lineage, as you know, so I really can't be xenophobic. But I, I say that to say
Mm,
it's like maybe if it's more personalized for us,
mm.
right? And it's
Where we
no
can try and
secret.
put ourselves into the English shoes.
Yeah, right. Because we're looking at them as children, but it's no secret
Mm,
the rivalry between us and Nigeria runs deep, especially from a footballing front as Bafana become more prominent. So how
hmm
would you feel? Like, imagine the first Afcon we win. Oh well,
It's a foreign coach.
since
Mm.
'96 is by a Nigerian coach, because that could be the reality for England if they win a World Cup.
They will give him citizenship if he wins a trophy with Bafana. In fact,
So
South Africa might need that. It actually might have to happen. In,
So do you think that do you see that happening for Tuchel too? Do you think if Tuchel do you think all the wiles are gone, all the patriotic calls are gone if Tuchel delivers, or do you think it'll be a thing of, oh, this is so bittersweet, our first trophy comes from a
a
German?
foreigner,
Yeah.
I I have to think people are capable of seeing that the ends justify the means.
Okay.
Like if we win with whoever, it doesn't matter, bro. It can't that
Mm,
can't be what you fixate on. Like
mm,
I've said it to you many times before about how I felt about Arteta the player being our coach ahead of actual legends like Vieira, for example. It can't be that Arteta's done what he's done for us, and I'm still just like Vieira must be in the job. Why? Why?
right.
This guy's done it. Like
That's a great point. Yeah.
it doesn't matter how I feel about the person. The person does what we need them to do. Like I'd like to think that I don't like with how South Africans are though. I feel like a Nigerian coach would struggle. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually not even funny. Like I'm thinking about it now. I actually don't think it would work.
It'll be
I,
so
I
bad,
like it
dude.
doesn't matter how good. If Pep was Nigerian, I don't think he'd survive in South
They
Africa.
wouldn't give
I
a
do.
fuck.
We do have a serious problem.
Yeah,
We do
we
have a
do.
serious problem
Yeah,
in
we
terms
do.
of like
We
how
genuinely
people
do.
would react to that kind of news. Um,
But I agree with you. I'd embrace it again. I'm not someone like Africa without borders is my whole thing, right? But like not to get too political, but that's kind of like my whole. It's like who cares who does it? Like we're rejoicing in the streets. Um, do you have any like dream scenarios for this English squad? Like just to ask, just to kind of go back to England specifically. What is the ceiling? Two things. I have two questions. What is the seeding you have for this English team when you look at the scope of international football? Spain look
mm,
like they're entering a serious stage of dominance. We'll see how Argentina are with Messi obviously deteriorating, but they've been the guys to beat. And secondly, how do you think the English public would respond? Just a quick scenario for you. If it's like
mm.
a World Cup final and then he takes off Kane at like 50 minutes. Do you think they'll say self sabotage and it's against Germany? Like, that's a stupid question, but like, what do you think would happen?
I think, and I'm assuming in that scenario, then England go on to lose the final, having done
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Let's
Oh,
say they lose, but they lose on like
penalties again.
on penalties again, and it's because Pickford misses. So the Kane has no bearing on anything. It's because like Pickford misses his penalty. Everyone scores, and then it goes to Pickford, and he misses.
I think by like gauging English fan sentiment on the internet, I don't think it would change anything. Right?
Uh,
I think that it would immediately be this is what happens. They take off our best penalty take out. Like there'd be something. There would
right,
be
right.
there'd be a chance that the substitute striker misses, and they'd be like Kane would have put that away.
Kane would have.
They like it would become like I feel like they would just go to that level. I think the fact that we saw Saka, Sancho, and Rashford face racist abuse for missing penalties.
Right.
Um, I I genuinely don't think England will ever be able to like remove that like that stain
Stigma.
from
Mm, mm,
from
mm.
how people perceive them. It showed then that like they are always looking for something to blame. They can't accept the lack of quality. They can't accept um, almost like a lack of accountability. Like sometimes you're just not at that level, and that's why that happens.
Right.
Um, like they
And in
didn't
terms of
like.
ceiling, where do you see them?
I think it's almost exactly the same. I think we just might have less question marks around certain decisions. I think we might, as fans, be able to be like, oh, I understand why Tuchel's doing that. I think that's all that really changes. England wins as far as you can realistically expect them to have gone.
Mm.
They got to two. They got to two Euro finals, and they got to a World Cup quarterfinal just now, where they lost to France, who went to the final.
Mm.
Like,
And then before that, it was the semi to the people who were in the final.
yeah, yeah. So it's just like what like as like obviously we know Southgate. We feel he should have done more. He could have done. They could have played better football. He couldn't get them over the line. But to a certain extent, it's just like it is just a bit of bad luck to a certain extent. Like it
Yeah.
really does suck to lose on penalties. Donnarumma was incredible in that Euros. Like
Mm.
it's not some great shame that they didn't win in 2021. The fact that like they lost to Spain, I think that's more on Southgate. But even then, you have a Foden that was underperforming, and I don't think he was underperforming because of Southgate. You have you have a Kane that doesn't seem to be his best self as well.
He's
You,
in a weird
England,
place as a footballer right now. I won't
yeah,
lie.
England had equalized in that final. Cole Palmer had scored, right? Like they were back in it for a moment. Like Southgate had made a sub that worked out, and Spain were just better than them.
Mm.
Spain were just better than they just had more answers than them. So I don't know if I think Tuchel wins them, this one big trophy. I think they'd need a bit of luck for that to be the case. I think France will always have more than them. I think Spain will always have more than them. They're still not my favorites. I don't think there's a coach that can suddenly fix that.
Mm.
But again, we'd have to see what the first few games of England under Tuchel look like because I haven't seen England ever look like that, a side good enough to win a tournament. So maybe he can bridge the gap where you can see them, you can realistically see them in a big game and say, England can win this.
Right. Right.
England can and they will. Because reality is, I haven't seen England play a side that is of their talent level and win. They
Mm.
lose all those games.
Mm.
They
Everything has
like
been quite avoidant, like in terms of their
yeah, like
success, which is always was
yeah, like
also
they
been
they
like that was always the question with
with
Southgate. Yeah.
Southgate, yeah, like both Euros runs were the easy side of the draw.
Mm.
They didn't have to play Germany this time around. They played Germany in the last one, so credit to them for beating. But again, that was a very wounded Germany. So it's really not the same thing. When they
Yeah.
played France at the World Cup, but you see, even then, you're a Harry Kane penalty away from maybe being in it. But at the same time, you still thought France were always going to win it.
Gonna
Like
win it. Yeah.
Southgate did all he could with what his level is, what England are. It's unfortunate. I think Tuchel wins them a Nations League. That's what they'll get.
I was gonna say I think they're gonna win something. I do think Tuchel is gonna bridge the gap between like how you see yourself and how you perform on the pitch. He's never been a manager to back down from opposition, irrespective of how big they are. So I think that is good for England. I think England is a team, and this is maybe the benefit of having a foreign coach. I think obviously the English media is the English media, but I do think they will benefit from someone who doesn't subscribe to the narratives all the way. Like you could see for
Mm,
Southgate, those criticisms were personal. You
yeah.
could see it hurt him, right? I think Tuchel is like, I don't owe you anything. I've been successful at three clubs, right? I've won trophies. I've won the trophies you guys all respect. So I think it can benefit them, and I think there will be a convergence. But again, the extent of that is to be determined. I think we'll have to wait and see how he's able to assert himself on this team. And England need that. They need a strong head figure, in my
Yeah.
opinion. But yeah, that's all I have on that.
Yeah, man. And thank you. And thank you. Lastly, before we wrap the episode up, we must touch on what has been billed as one of the most exciting Clásicos in a very, very long time.
Hmm.
Hansi Flick's Barcelona versus Colin Ancelotti's Real Madrid. Um, I think on some level it's only as exciting because it's taken a while for Barca to look like a real team. We've had 3 years where we've kind of just been like, how good are Barca really?
Mm.
Like even when they won the league, it was still just like, you guys are weird.
It's good
These guys are
management by
weird.
Xavi, yeah, which is not dapped enough in my opinion.
Honestly, very underappreciated because there were still very obvious holes in that team.
Hmm.
I think if Ferran Torres is playing tons of minutes, there are question marks around the level of that side. Uh, my apologies to Ferran Torres, but you know, I think that how he's been used this season says a lot about.
Yeah,
Well, sorry, rather the fact that he hasn't been missed this
hasn't been.
season.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, says a lot about what Barca's ceiling is now versus when he was still playing quite frequently.
yeah. I agree.
Yeah,
So,
but yeah,
in
good.
terms of previews, how are you? How are you feeling? I think the only thing I fear from a Barcelona perspective is the moment, the temperament. I think Hansi Flick does a great job of creating this aura of like they're very like his team's always very focused. Like you can see, I remember like if you think back to that Bayern team of his, like they played at PSG in a very heated game because those two teams actually it's an underrated rivalry. Those guys do not like each other, and where in the past you've seen like Kimmich like maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't think in that final I saw Bayern Munich players like getting riled up, right? And whereas in the past season, the season prior, when PSG beat Bayern, I remember Kimmich shouting in Neymar's face and Goretzka getting into it, and I think there is a level of like mental focus he instills in his teams that is very beneficial. However, I think the moment may be a bit too big for the likes of what's Casado, what's the Kubarsi, the center back.
17, man.
I 70s are kids, dude. So that's the only thing that makes me a bit skeptical. Whereas Madrid, with Jude is like the perfect embodiment of Madrid because it's like I don't care how I've played, I'm
It's
Jude, right?
about
And
the
that's
moment.
the moment. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's the only thing. I think it could be a case of Barca trying to play football and Madrid trying to win, and that favors Madrid. Also, it's away, right? So, but Madrid have the home advantage. That's the only thing I think
Is it
Barcelona.
not the other way around?
No, it's at. Is it? Are they back at the Santiago?
No, I think it's at the new camp. Well, not
No,
the new camp.
it's at
It's.
Santiago.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
It
Bernabeu. That's what I'm saying
is.
now.
It is. You correct. You correct. You correct.
I think that's a big factor, and I think the success of Barca is dependent on their big players performing as big players, right? And also, most importantly, no Ter Stegen, and I don't know how Pena is gonna do.
Yeah. That's.
That's a tough fixture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it looks like it's
Nah.
good news for your boys, man.
I think the way you contextualize it makes perfect sense. I think. I think the fact that they are going to this with what, like maybe three different teenagers on the side
Hmm.
is it's a big ask. It's a big ask for the biggest fixture in world football when it's at its peak. I I I don't have that little confidence though because I feel like there's like I think I've shared this with you before. The side that has the most noise around them very rarely actually
Loses a
wins
derby.
the big ones.
Oh, wins the derby. Oh, got you, got
Yeah,
you.
no, not the, well, on Super Dub, I'm saying like just in general. Like I feel like
Mm,
going to tournament, the side that everyone's talking about, it's very rarely that side. Like before the Euros, it wasn't Spain people are talking about, but like in hindsight, it's kind of obvious. Like they
How's
had
it
the most
now?
cohesion. Like they're just
Yeah.
silently ticking.
Mm.
Um, I think when it comes to like the Champions League, it's the same kind of thing. Like when a team is silently ticking, there's not you don't really notice them until much later on, and then they end up winning it.
Mm.
I think going into this game, obviously, Barca are the high flyers in Europe, right? Like the most goals scored, and there's obviously tons of attention on wow, look what's happening here. But I think they haven't really had like a statement moment, whereas Madrid make headlines every single week, right?
Mm.
And the onus is on Madrid to go out and win this game. The
This
onus
is
is
true.
on what will Kylian Mbappe be like in his first Classico. And obviously, this is not a player who is not used to the big stage, right? We've seen him in two World Cup finals, and we've seen him show up in his only World Cup finals.
Hmm.
It's not as if this is a team full of novices. They should be more than prepared to show up in a game like this. But I think just looking at player quality, man, I don't know in what world Madrid keep a clean sheet in this game, for example. We've got Vasquez up against probably Rafinha in the form of his life. Danny
Mm.
Olmo is back fit again. Javi has made his return. I don't think he's fully fit to start a game. But having watched Barca against Sevilla, I
Scary game.
legitimately that Sheiks. In all
And and
seriousness, this
and
is the
and
first time I've been
also
afraid
and
of Barca
also
since Messi was last there. Like maybe since
and and
pre-COVID.
and and on this as well, Lewandowski looks like he's a serious footballer again. Like it's not
No,
just the
not
goals
not
now.
serious. That is the most lethal striker in world football right now.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not for me. It's more than just the goals because he was scoring in his first two seasons, but like
Mm,
it's the presence, right?
mm.
It's the conviction. It's the he's not
The
seeing defenders
certainty,
again.
man.
Yeah,
Mm,
he's not seeing defenders again. He's not seeing a goalkeeper in goal. So that's a good point. I think you are right. I think Barcelona do pose a greater threat. Mbappe seemed to like get off the mark this weekend. I saw his goal. I saw the second half. So he seems to be a bit more confident, which could be a huge X factor. And I know you're pointing out matchups, but Martinez is what 30, 33.
mm.
Kubarasi is a kid, right?
70,
So
yeah.
that's not favorable for them too, right? I I
Mm,
I think it's a net equal when it
mm,
comes to that, but I do think Barcelona have a greater sense of cohesion and
mm.
understanding again of what they need to do. That's not an indictment on Ancelotti as much as it is. I think Real Madrid are suffering from the same thing England suffer from, where it's like we have so much quality. How do we get them all on the pitch and get them all ticking at the same time? Um, so I think for that reason, I would probably side with Barcelona
Yeah.
to win, but we are Real Madrid. Like it's at the Santiago, bro. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they end up winning a game against the run of play like 3-1.
Mm. Okay.
Mm.
So I think maybe because I have too much emotion involved in this, I'm not seeing it the same way you are. In my mind, this game would be better if Madrid were prepared to suffer. You know, when Oaks are just
Ah,
making tackles, making the game uncomfortable,
yeah.
and if the game was at Barca, I think being expected to, I guess, take it more of a foothold in the game because it's at the Bernabeu.
Hmm.
I think that kind of suits Barca. I think Barca being as direct as they are, I think there's lots of holes to try and exploit. Like we have to hope that like I feel like we need 11 defenders. We need 11 players capable of switching on. I think Barca are the only, well, not the only side, but are just extremely capable of hurting Madrid in a way that I think other teams just can't. Like the Bernabeu is the Bernabeu for everybody, but it's not the same thing for Barca
For
specifically. So
Barcelona,
that
yeah.
all of that being said, I think 2-2 draw. That's where I'm settled on. I don't see Madrid winning this particular game. Maybe Mbappe does score, but I would be joyfully shocked if I woke up on Monday morning and I looked at the score and I was just like, oh wow, Madrid won this game. I can't see it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel this is in Barca's favor.
I
But
can
yeah,
I can
we
I
shall
can
see.
I can walk I can agree with that. I can say draw or my logic you convince me. My logic is moving away from I still think Barca will have the better of the exchange in the game, but I
Mm,
can see a draw. But we are Real Madrid tax is telling me Madrid could win it against the run of play. So I'm saying 1-1 or
mm,
3-1 to Madrid.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No, I hear it. I hear it. And that has been Debates Never Die, good people. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. Sheiks, BBLFC, as you said, top five. Where? Top five in the country?
Let me break it down. These are my
Mm,
closing remarks. I don't care about anything else.
mm,
So currently I am 58th of all Arsenal fans. I am
mm,
fourth in South Africa. That's in
mm,
the whole country. Yes,
mm,
I am 327th of all FPL players on planet Earth,
mm,
which
mm,
is it's
mm,
like being it's like being the Mark Cuban of FPL players. Like
mm, mm,
I'm in the upper echelon, top one
mm,
percent. And in the Super Sport League, I'm 31st. So yeah, man, things are looking up. Tough week for me the past week. Haaland stinker yet again. Stay humble there. And but the players that came through for me, Keane, from Everton, clean sheet goal, phenomenal. Danny Welbeck, the gift that keeps on giving. And of course, the Egyptian king that loves Christmas, Mohamed Salah. So I'm looking to maintain this. I'm looking to maintain this. This is personal. This is personal this season, and if I do fall off, you'll never hear from me again. I won't bring it up. So you guys will
Mm.
have to bring it up. But yeah,
So,
man,
any
that's what's
tips?
going on.
Any tips for FPL fans? Who are you bringing in this week?
Any tips? Learn football. Yeah, you guys don't know this sport, bro.
This is why I
Trust
don't
me.
give you depths.
I'm joking. Hold on, hold on. In all seriousness, right? In all seriousness, my tips are we. I've noticed FPL players are too top heavy, so we hyperfixate on the big names, and obviously because it'll get you the most points. But what they always overlook is the strikers from the smaller teams that are up against weaker opposition. So
Mm,
the thing that's really been saving me this FPL season so far has been the transfers for cheaper players when they're up and against like an Ipswich or up against the Wolves who haven't
mm,
had the best start to the season. So that's the tip I will give. I scroll through the top 20 and I always see it's no changes. They're just
mm,
kind of like, no, if I pick my captain, I think this is the mentality of a lot of people because you'll have like Haaland, Salah, Son, and Saka, right, and Palmer, one of those five. So it's a question, two of those five in your team. So it's a question of
mm,
will I pick the right captain this week?
mm,
That is a good way to go about it. But I've noticed that like who's Everton playing? Hmm? Who's Southampton playing this week? And if you can
mm,
capitalize on the right player and the right game, you
mm.
can go far. So yeah, that's all I'm getting. Gonna give you guys for free because I am trying to get this cash and get my respect up. But yeah, man, FPL, BBLFC, you love to see it.
No, no, fair enough, fair enough. My closing remarks. I know the United fans are going to love this one. United have won a game. United have won a game.
Holy
Uh,
glory, man.
I would just like to say a big shout out to Marcus Rashford. They don't dap you up enough, my guy.
Yeah, facts.
Uh, please don't ever forget that is the first man Thomas Tuchel's probably been on the phone with out taking his job. Rashford is back in the England squad. I guarantee you that
Beans,
much.
beans, beans. Let's go.
Thank you for tuning in for this 2 minute edition of Debates Never Die. Happy to have you here, and we will be back very, very soon.